Greetings, fiends. It's your old pal Horror Mike doing a Sunday broadcast of the Friday night show. Now, this is a condensed video, condensed broadcast, which should be like 20 to 30 minutes long of the show that I did on Friday night about 1970s sci-fi horror films. So I'm keeping it short because I know you've got things to do and people to scare. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. First off, we've got a little bit of news. Now, my book, the Pre-Code Horror Comics Original Art Edition, is now on Indie Planet. Yes, the first 100 copies, which were signed and numbered, sold out quickly, but I am glad to report that Indie Planet is on the ball and they got that thing up on their website. This 126-page book is jam-packed with pre-code horror comics goodness from the late 1940s and early 1950s, 12 complete original art stories, original art comic book covers, and their final published full color covers, plus a few unpublished covers, stuff that you may have never seen before and that has probably never been in print. So if you love pre-code horror comics like I love pre-code horror comics, check out Pre-Code Horror Comics, the original art edition, now on Indie Planet. That link is in the description. If you're a fan of the Blood Island monster movies, like I am, you're going to want to check out this new Indiegogo campaign, Beast of Blood Island graphic novel. Yes, beautiful babes and tropical terror await all who dare visit Blood Island. Now, this is a campaign by artist Stephen Sestilli, who did the great freaking covers on this and artwork for the comic books. This takes issues number 1 and 2 and combines them into one graphic novel. As it says here, for mature audiences only, 82 pages, full color, square-bound spine. So these stories follow in line with the original Blood Island films. Of course, Brides of Blood, 1968, Mad Doctor of Blood Island, 1969, and Beast of Blood from 1970. The Eddie Romero Philippines films produced by John Ashley. This is one of the covers. They've got two different covers. The naughty bits have been starred out here on the cover, but as you can see, it's pretty wild. And that is a cover by Stephen Sestilli. The original painting and a few others are being sold on this campaign. So if you're interested, head on over to Indiegogo and look up Beast of Blood Island. Next up, we have Memory Crypt of Castle Hills. Yes, folks, you're going to want to get over to Rumble. This is Mike originally from the Comic Crypt of Castle Hills. And what happened is that he was on YouTube and, well, he got a little saucy with his content, so YouTube booted him. Now he's on Rumble. He's just established his channel on Rumble called The Memory Crypt of Castle Hills. And he's only been on there for like 5 weeks. He has uploaded a ton of videos. If you like stuff like this, for example, The Making of a Monster Kid, Halloween Hootenanny, the Kolchak Collection, HBO Tales from the Crypt series covers, Submariner 1968 series collection. He's got all kinds of stuff. He even has Brian Usna's Tales of Blood Island Kickstarter, which is associated with the Indiegogo campaign I just mentioned about Blood Island. So he's got a ton of stuff in here, folks. You're going to want to check it out. Head on over to Rumble and sign up or sign in and give Memory Crypt of Castle Hills a follow. You'll be glad that you did. If you watched the Friday night show, we did the second installation of the Sci-Fi Horror Book of the Month Club. So what I decided to do last week was to make a Book of the Month Club membership card. This card kind of falls in line with those classic 60s and 70s monster membership cards, such as Famous Monsters, Creepy, Eerie, and so forth. And I even used some of the same wording. As you can see here, it says Sci-Fi Horror Book of the Month Club. This is to certify that your name is a dismember in bad standing of the Sci-Fi Horror Book of the Month Club and is entitled to all the putrid perks that come with membership. This card is valid as long as the member is living or undead. All you got to do is click the link in the description of this video, and you will be able to download this card and print it out yourselves. And next up on the Sci-Fi Horror Book of the Month Club in September, we are covering The Shadow over Innsmouth, H.P. Lovecraft's immortal novella, and the films that were inspired by it, including Stuart Gordon's great film, Dagon, which is basically a combination of The Shadow over Innsmouth and Dagon, both H.P. Lovecraft stories, and even a Japanese adaptation of The Shadow over Innsmouth, which you may have never seen before. Hope to see you there. And now on to the movies, my good fiends. First up, the classic 1978 film shot in Venice, California, Slyus. Finally, nature unleashes its revenge. From the pollution of our nuclear waste came the killer we couldn't destroy. Hell hath no fury like Slyus. And the description: when radiation leaks into the ocean, a flesh-eating monster rises from the depths to wreak havoc on the bohemian enclave of Venice, California. Now, there's a couple of great things about Slyus, folks. Naturally, it is a low-budget film. It's not the type of flick you're going to put up against Alien. That being said, the creature is really cool looking. I like the creature a lot. He holds up. He looks great in the film. The film is totally watchable. Okay, it's not the greatest screenplay in the world. It's a film you can watch from beginning to end without hitting the fast forward very much. So that is Slyus from 1978, and I have got a tasty little trailer for you right now.
Slyus. A man in search of something that could not exist. A horror so terrifying that no one would believe. Slyus, spawned from a nuclear hell, it forages for food to survive.
What happened? I don't know, but I don't want to be sitting without power when that thing finishes the job.
Slyus. Rated PG.
Next up, we have God Told Me To, 1976, Larry Cohen. Now, if you guys know about Larry Cohen, he is responsible for such films as It's Alive, Q, the Winged Serpent, The Stuff. In other words, unusual science fiction horror films that I really like a lot. And God Told Me To from 1976 is no exception. This is a really strange flick. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. As it says in the description, a detective uncovers evidence of a malevolent alien messiah while investigating a series of senseless murders committed by random New Yorkers. And this one stars Tony LoBianco, who was very popular in the 1970s and 80s. And Sandy Dennis is also in this film, along with Andy Kaufman. He doesn't have a huge role in the film, but his particular role stands out. And here's a trailer for God Told Me To.
On December 25th, 1953, a child is born, a virgin birth. Tomorrow, all civilization will tremble under his almighty power.
Sacrifices to your God are nothing new.
Are you going to tell me all those people are meant to die?
Why did you attack all those people?
God told me to.
Next up, we have the 1977 Nazi zombie schlocker, Shockwaves. As it says on the cover of the key art, the best of the Nazi zombie movies, starring Peter Cushing, Brooke Adams, John Carradine. Now, I did like this film. I liked it when I saw it the first time back in the late 70s. I've seen it a few times. I even have the one-sheet movie poster laying around here somewhere. Brutally vicious zombie stormtroopers, engineered by Nazis in secret during World War II, begin to rise from the depths for blood off the Florida coast. Peter Cushing, Brooke Adams, John Carradine, and Don Stout in a film by Ken Wiederhorn. Once again, a big plus about this film is that the zombie Nazis look really good. The makeup effects are good. The story is reasonably good. Look, it's good enough to watch the film once or twice, maybe 3 times. On that basis, I recommend it. Next up, we have the 1975 sub-classic, The Stepford Wives, starring Catherine Ross. This may be the first sci-fi horror women's lib film ever made. Not sure about that, but I get the feeling that it is. As it says in the description, a modern woman and her family, new to the town of Stepford, starts to see that the wives in town are suspiciously perfect and submissive to their men. Starring Catherine Ross in the lead role, Paula Prentice, Tina Louise is also in this film, along with Peter Masterson and Franklin Cover, directed by Brian Forbes. And I have a short trailer for you.
A very modern suspense story from the author of Rosemary's Baby. The Stepford Wives, about what men can do behind closed doors.
They were telling me about the men's association. Right now, it's strictly men only.
Not to mention that creepy men's association.
We moved here about 2 months ago, and Ed joins this men's association. Anything that gets him out of the house nights is fine with me.
I like to watch women doing little domestic chores.
You came to the right town. I want to please him now. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. It took me so long to get the upstairs floor to shine.
Charmaine's changed, Carol Van Zandt's changed, and so have all those other women's club members. I'm getting the hell out of Stepford.
Next up, it's everyone's favorite half-man, half-octopus film, Octoman from 1971. I had to put this in here. It is sci-fi horror. Yes, it is kind of a schlocker. But the Octoman, if I recall correctly, was created by Rick Baker. While on an expedition in Mexico to research radiation levels in the water, Slyus again, a group of scientists discover a creature who is part man, part octopus. And this film stars Kerwin Matthews and Jeff Morrow, David Essex, to name a few, directed by Harry Essex. Now, I don't have a trailer for you, but I do have a couple of short clips when Octoman attacks. Check these out.
Yeah, but we still got that log to negotiate. You ever hear of reverse gear? The same way we got in, we'll get out.
Next up, we have one of my favorite sci-fi horror films from the 70s. Julie Christie carries The Demon Seed. Fear for Her. Demon Seed, 1977, adapted from the novel by Dean R. Koontz. A scientist creates a supercomputer that seeks info on human beings. As the AI slowly takes over the house, it fulfills its darkest desires. Starring Julie Christie, Fritz Weaver, and Garrett Graham, amongst others. The acting is great in this film. I love the story. It's well done. The effects are really cool. All around, just a really solid sci-fi horror film. If you haven't seen it, it's on Tubi. Highly recommended, folks. Next up, a personal favorite from my youth. Boy, do I remember seeing this at the drive-in. I may have seen it in the cinema as well. I know I went and saw it a couple of times. Laser Blast, folks, 1978. This one got picked up by Full Moon Features, and it is on Tubi. When an outcast teenager finds an alien weapon left behind in the desert and goes on a rampage, each laser blast transforms him further into an alien. Starring Roddy McDowall, who has a decent role in this film, Kim Milford in the starring role, Cheryl Smith, Keenan Wynn is also in this film. One of the great things about Laser Blast is the fantastic stop-motion animation by Dave Allen. And you can see a bit of it in this trailer. Check it out.
This could could all be happening right now, somewhere on this planet. It's the story of a UFO that has landed and visitors from a galaxy light years away. It's an adventure unlike anything on this planet. A weapon that might belong to us in the future, but is here now. Laser blast.
Next up, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, another great sci-fi horror film from the 1970s. Now, this was the second adaptation of the fantastic Jack Finney novel from the 1950s. Of course, the first one was by Don Siegel, also in the 1950s. It is a fantastic adaptation of the novel. I plan on doing a sci-fi horror book of the month club on Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or the Body Snatchers, because there have been several adaptations, as you guys are aware. They did an adaptation in the 1950s. 20 years later, they did another adaptation, this one, 1978. About 20 years later, in the 1990s, they did another adaptation that was by Abel Ferrara, and I believe it's just called The Body Snatchers. And then in the 2000s, almost 20 years later, they did another adaptation called Invasion. Expect to see another adaptation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I'm sure before 2030. As it says, this dazzling remake, well, actually it's not a remake, it's just another adaptation of the original novel from Jack Finney. In any case, as they say, 1956 Spine Tingler stars Donald Sutherland, Brooke Adams, Jeff Goldblum, Leonard Nimoy, and Veronica Cartwright in an eerie tale of possession by alien pods. You know, that kind of feeling one day when you look around and people that you thought you knew suddenly seem like aliens? Yeah, folks, that's no mistake. And that is why the book is consistently being readapted every generation. Because when it comes down to it, it's a universal truth. There's no way I was going to do a sci-fi horror segment without including the great Don Dohler and the 1978 film Alien Factor. So Alien Factor reminds me a little bit of Laser Blast in the sense that there are a lot of special effects in it. You got spaceships, you've got stop motion animation, but on an even lower budget. You may recall his fantastic magazine, Cinemagic. I still have a few dozen issues from that, and I sometimes refer to it if I'm doing special effects for a film to this day. That is the impact that Don Dohler had on the independent film world. A spaceship containing dangerous alien specimens crashes on Earth near a small backward town, unleashing a bloodbath on its residents. And here is a short trailer for Alien Factor.
Something is not quite right.
And I think we ought to call in the state police.
Next up, we have David Cronenberg's 1975 shocker, Shivers, also known as They Came From Within. The unsuspecting residents of an apartment building are in danger of being wiped out after a twisted medical experiment goes awry. And this one is a classic 70s body horror film, as only David Cronenberg can give you. You may recall his other 70s body horror flick, Rabid, which is excellent, and I've covered that before on the show. Currently on Tubi, there are 3 or 4 David Cronenberg films, including Shivers, Rabid, Dead Ringers. So if you haven't seen it and you like sci-fi horror and in particular body horror, check out Shivers. Next up, it's End of the World. Yes, the film that Christopher Lee was kind of duped into making. Strange signals from outer space lead a professor and his wife to a remote convent infiltrated by aliens on a mission to destroy the diseased Earth. Starring Christopher Lee, Kirk Scott, Sue Lyon, Dean Jagger, and Lou Ayres. As I understand it, Christopher Lee was told that there were going to be a few other stars in this film, kind of like bigger stars. And so they kind of duped Christopher Lee into being in this film, thinking that he was going to be acting with some larger actors. But in an interview of Christopher Lee that I read a while back, he just basically said this was a film, The End of the World, that he regretted making. So with that, here's a short trailer for you.
They walk among us. They look like us. They have a power far greater than we've ever seen before, and they have decided to destroy us. You have everything to look forward to, except tomorrow. End of the world.
And that brings us to the 1971 film Venom. I cannot believe Tubi has Venom, but they do. As it says, a man holidaying in a Tyrolean village gets caught up with seductive women and a nerve gas made from animal experimentation. This is one weird freaking movie, okay? The only thing I can suggest is go on to Tubi or go to YouTube, look up Venom from 1971 and watch the trailer and see if you're interested in watching this film. It's just bizarre. It says here it's rated PG-13. This ain't no PG-13 film. This is a full R-rated film. There is full frontal nudity a couple of times in this film. There is TNA. I don't know where they got that rating from. It could be just a mix-up. I don't know. If you want to watch a really strange sci-fi horror film, this is probably the one for you. Venom is sometimes interesting. Sometimes it's very plotting. It's just a mixed bag of a film. Okay, folks, that concludes our look at sci-fi horror films on Tubi. I hope you enjoyed this little rebroadcast, redo of the Friday night show. Next Friday night, folks, and then subsequently on Sunday when I do the rebroadcast, the redo of the show, it's all science fiction films from the 1970s. Oh, yeah. And there were quite a few. Logan's Run, Colossus the Forbin Project, A Boy and His Dog, Phase 4, kind of borders on sci-fi horror, but I kept it in the science fiction category because I do believe ultimately it's more classic science fiction than horror. Although it is rather an unsettling premise. If you haven't seen it, you got to check it out. I'll show you where you can see it commercial free next Friday night on the Horror Mike Show 1970s Science Fiction Films. Until then, have a great rest of the week, and I will talk to you soon.